It sounds like something Bill Belichick would do if he was in charge of this distillery. It just sounds like they're kind of cutting corners and they're saying, yeah, we're going to cut years off the distilling process by doing X, but we're not going to put it on our label because of Y. But we're also going to grow and win Super Bowls because of Z. You know what I mean? It just sounds like something Bill would do.
Yeah, it's very much a let's steal signal calls and deflate footballs for sure.
They didn't prove the football thing. How did Brady do in that Super Bowl when they pumped the footballs up?
I'm not even worried about it, dude. I don't live in the past. I'm a Vikes fan.
He won. Yo, yo, yo. Welcome in to another episode of the show. I'm Ryan O'Leary.
And I'm Mike Zika.
And this is the Bourbon Playbook. It's just another
podcast in the basement.
That's right. It's great to have you with us, you the listener, of course. If you like what you hear, support the pod, of course, by helping us spread the word, telling a bourbon-loving friend, or dropping us a dram on tbplaybook.com. Either way, we appreciate the hell out of you, though, for joining us, right, Zika? Just
always, man.
Love the listeners. I think we just got to get right into the pours of the week, though. I think it's that kind of episode. Just got off Super Bowl Sunday. That's still kind of fresh in the mind. Shout out to neighbor Zach for hosting that little Super Bowl get-together.
Z-man.
Of course, the Bourbon Playbook boys didn't show up till the second half. So
slackers.
We're such assholes. We kind of have to make an entrance now, Zika, that we're some of the more famous people in Victoria, Minnesota.
Naturally, yeah.
I think it's a population of like 400 here in Victoria. It's growing, though. It's growing. But I think we just got to go straight into the pours, pour this one out for the official end of football season, eh?
Yeah, I think obviously as much as we banter on about the NFL, our kids, our dogs, I mean, it's kind of obvious this week. Pour of the week, Super Bowl 59. 59. 60 sounds good for the Vikes. It has a good ring to it.
Super Bowl 60. All right, here's a double pour for Super Bowl 59. Eagles 40, Chiefs 22. Was not even that close. Complete blowout. Destruction. The Eagles put on a show. The Chiefs were embarrassed. Going for NFL history, obviously. They would have been the first team ever to win 3 Super Bowls in a row, three-peat. Couldn't get it done. They ran out of steam there. Give me your honest knee-jerk reaction to the experience of watching that game.
Underwhelming. All the way from the game to the halftime performance to like Patrick Mahomes' GOAT talk that I thought was going to be, honestly, I was just waiting for Patrick Mahomes to pull it together, rally around his team, have them rally around him, and come out the second half swinging. Even they were down by that deficit. I was just waiting. It's kind of like that Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady type of game where, all right, you're down 14, you're down 21. Okay, like when's it going to kick into gear? And it just didn't happen, man. And if you're truly going to call somebody a GOAT, and again, I love Patrick Mahomes. I think he's a fantastic quarterback. But, I mean, a performance like that, I mean, he took a lot of accountability in the press conference afterwards. Respect him for that, right? He could have gone on and on about defensive pressure and offensive linemen and lack of weapons compared to the Eagles. But ultimately, it was just kind of a piss-poor performance and not very entertaining, if I'm being honest. And that's, again, my opinion. But what's your hot take, man?
For you, it wasn't entertaining, but for me, it was, this is not a lie. In my 38 years of existence, as a lifelong fan of the New England Patriots, this was a top 5 Super Bowl for me. Top 5, Zika.
Really?
I enjoyed the hell out of this. My wife at one point looked at me and was like, I think it was like 34-6 in the fourth quarter. It was a complete and utter absolute destruction blowout, right? And my wife goes, man, this Super Bowl kind of sucks, huh? And I go, oh, no. Inject this one right into my veins. I'm the happiest person on earth right now. She's like, oh, we have very different opinions on how this game is going. Top 5 Super Bowls of all time that I've sat and watched. Number one's got to be 28-3 comeback against the Falcons.
Amazing.
Mean, that's an all-timer.
Yeah.
I was, sitting in a room with my dad and my brother too. My wife was there as well. Fantastic. We'll never forget that. How we felt at halftime. We were keeping the faith, and then the comeback started and it happened, and it was amazing. Super Bowl win, overtime. So that's number one. Number two, I would say the one where it all started, 2001. Patriots beating the greatest show on turf, the Rams. They were a 14-point underdog. Brady's first year as the starter, where he took over for Drew Bledsoe that year. Kicked off the greatest dynasty in all of sports, right? A dynasty that lasted 2 decades for the Pats. So that's number two. Number three, remember the Malcolm Butler interception on the goal line when all the Seahawks had to do was hand it to Marshawn Lynch, beast mode.
Never forget.
But they threw it.
Stack receivers, 2 to the right. Russell Wilson extends the hands he has. Wilson, quick throw. And it's intercepted. Intercepted by Malcolm Butler. Butler has it at the 1. Malcolm Butler stepped in front of the throw. No way. And the Patriots have possession with 20 seconds to go.
Number 4, as a diehard Pats fan, I got to say Brady winning it with the Buccaneers is up there. It's got it. That makes my list. I mean,
okay.
If Belichick had his way, Brady would have been gone years prior for Garoppolo. Like, he was ready to move on. Brady would not let it happen. Robert Kraft wouldn't let it happen. Brady wins a couple more Super Bowls in spite of Belichick, and then goes to Tampa Bay, one of the crap franchises in NFL history. And in his first year, not only wins, but wins in a blowout over the guy you were talking about as the GOAT earlier, which I think is interesting because that's where I want to go with this rant. But Mahomes and the Chiefs, Brady blew them out in the Super Bowl. All-time performance right there. Number 5, Super Bowl 59.
E-A-G-L-E-S, Eagles!
Thank you. Just want to make sure they got that last part in.
This really?
It is in my top 5 because while I have no allegiance to the Eagles, could care less if they win or lose.
It's out of spite, isn't it?
I mean, unless, let's be honest, I do cover the Eagles from my couch for the sporting news, so them winning helps me profit in some different ways. So I guess that
Fair.
Part of it is, but that's really not why it's a top 5 Super Bowl for me. I got the most enjoyment because the Eagles, not only did they blow out the Chiefs, they took a steaming dump on their dynasty talk in terms of where it ranks in history. And let's be honest, Patrick Mahomes is an all-time quarterback, and the Chiefs are an all-time team, an all-time dynasty, but they're not even close to the Patriots. They have a long way to go. The Patriots did it for 2 decades. They won 6 Super Bowls. They went to 9. Brady won 7. They went to 10, if you count Tampa Bay, right? So they got a long way to go, but people were ready to anoint the Chiefs. That's all they were talking about the week leading up for it. And as a Patriots fan, that was fucking annoying. And all they want to do is just anoint Patrick Mahomes. They didn't want him to wait his turn. They didn't want to talk Mahomes, Joe Montana, who went 4-0 in Super Bowls. They wanted to anoint Mahomes past Brady already, even though Brady went to 10. Brady went to 10 Super Bowls and won 7. And yes, Patrick was in his 5th, and he was 3-1 going into it, and he might have won 3 in a row, and that would have been a huge feather in his cap. And as a Patriots fan, I did not want that shit to happen because, the commentary this week, Zika, would have been horrible for Pats fans. It would have been all about Mahomes is the GOAT, the Chiefs are the greatest dynasty, blah, 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 blah. And instead, it's been the opposite, and people have been probably too hard on the Chiefs. They're just writing Mahomes off. It's like, I'm not writing him off. I just don't want the conversation now. I want it in 10 years. Let's see him in 10 years. He's got a lot of football left. Let's talk about the GOAT talk then, Mahomes versus Brady, but not now. It's too soon. But they were going to do it too soon if he won this Super Bowl. So for all those reasons, I woke up on Monday morning, flipped on ESPN, and just listened to all the shit talking about the Chiefs, probably not even justifiably so, and I reveled in it. And I ate my Cheerios and drank my coffee and just was giddy. And I listened to Boston sports radio all week, and even the more critical guys just sitting on their hands and saying, no, he's not Brady. They're not the Patriots. And I got to tell you, Zika, that made it a top 5 Super Bowl for me. And I'm still happy about it. Monday, I woke up like my team won the Super Bowl. That's how I felt. It was that kind of satisfaction because of the history of what the Patriots went through and what they accomplished. The Chiefs were infringing on that. Mahomes was infringing on Brady, and they came up. Not only did they come up short, but they got embarrassed. They didn't score until the 3rd quarter.
It was
Mahomes threw 2 straight interceptions. One was a pick 6. Both of them led to touchdowns that made it 24-0 at halftime. I mean, this was brutal. Oh God, it was so good. So for all those reasons, man, that is a top 5 Super Bowl for me. Number 5, Super Bowl 59. I loved every second of it. I enjoyed every second, and I wanted more at the end. I wanted them to get to 50 if they could. I wanted them to hang 50 on the Chiefs. So there you go. Rant over. I am ecstatic over here.
I should have known that this was an all-time game for you. And the only reason why is we're sitting at neighbor Zach's, and every time Mahomes threw a pick or got sacked, I look over and you're doing the Eagles caw, with like your wings and shit and standing up and running around like fly Eagles fly and all this bullshit. And I'm like, what is he doing? And I get it now. It all makes sense.
The reason I had to go on this rant is because a lot of people at neighbor Zach's party were wondering, why are you so giddy over the Eagles? I mean, this game blows, and we like the Chiefs. You know, like the Chiefs aren't hateable for a lot of casual fans, but they are hateable to me.
Right.
And I just had to. I didn't really explain myself too much, but that's why I saved it for the podcast. But if you look closely, I was wearing my TB12 GOAT T-shirt.
Yeah,
that was my
and hat. Right.
I honestly think the biggest winner of Super Bowl 59 was the guy doing the color commentary from the booth. Thomas, Edward, Patrick, Brady. Brady was in the booth, hovering over Mahomes and the Chiefs, and they couldn't get it done, and they had their worst day on the biggest stage. Oh God, it's so good. It's so good, Zeke. I'm gonna revel in this one, and I'm gonna really enjoy the pin being in that Dynasty and GOAT talk for a while now. It's just delicious. Love it.
So like I said, I didn't have any skin in the game, so really you spoke a lot about the actual, stats and football players and things like that. But for me, I'm like, what about the entertainment side, right? Which I feel like there's always drama. My wife's big into marketing, so she watches the Super Bowl for the commercials, which, to be fair, those old Dorito commercials used to slap. Those were so funny.
Yeah.
Obviously, like her brand being Fairlife, for them to have a little segment, I mean, it's kind of cool, right? But at the end of the day, I think there's two things that stood out to me outside of the diss to Drake with, Kendrick Lamar singing "Not Like Us," right? Like he wasn't supposed to do that.
And the smile into the camera as he was like,
"Say Drake, I hear you like I'm young. You better not ever go to cell block 1."
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
I hear you like I'm young.
Yeah.
Oh God, yeah,
Damn.
all timer.
Yeah, and then probably my favorite thing is anytime you involve Mr. Glass, Samuel L. Jackson, like in a Super Bowl, like in anything, like commercials, what he's just so himself. And if you can portray Uncle Sam as Samuel L. Jackson for systemic oppression or whatever it was for, I just think that was super cool. And then you got Serena Williams doing the Crip Walk, and she's apparently Drake's ex. And there's just like a ton of drama going on before our eyes that you almost need to Google to like really understand what's going on. It was an okay performance to me. Like going off of my favorite performance being, Dre, Snoop Dogg, Eminem, 50 Cent even like popped out there for a minute, I mean, that was sick, right?
Yeah, that was like so nostalgic.
Yeah, it's probably up there with the Riri one, and then the nip slip maybe. I don't know, one of the three. But
I thought Bruno Mars killed it one year. There's been some really good acts for sure.
He did. I forgot about that.
Wasn't there? U2 did something with like all the 9/11 victims or something. That one was pretty, striking. But yeah, I would agree. I think with Kendrick's performance, I mean, Kendrick Lamar is like a fucking genius. Like, dude got a
lyrical genius.
He got a Pulitzer Prize for one of his albums.
Did he really?
Yeah. He's unbelievable. He might be the GOAT of rap, honestly. Like he's on that trajectory. I mean, talk about the GOAT talk. Kendrick might be there, but I think, to your point a little bit there when you said you had to kind of Google what was going on. I mean, I think that was the part that lost me. I didn't understand in real time what was going on. I couldn't tell. Like I'm in a room with a bunch of people talking. The volume's not quite on loud enough. I got my 3-year-old and his friends running around. This was before I came over to neighbor Zach's. I was at another party, another neighbor's house with the kids. They weren't in bed yet. It's halftime, right? And it's just like, for my Super Bowl show, I just don't have, never mind the fact that I've eaten too much, I've drank too much beers. I can't sit there and like hyperanalyze everything and like try to follow along. Like, I'm reading like a Shakespeare or something, and I gotta like decipher everything, like
so true.
I'm sure Kendrick's performance was brilliant in a lot of ways, and the dancers and Samuel L. Jackson and all of it, and like it was all strategic in the way it was, but it didn't come across as like super exciting, right? But it was calculated. So like for me on the couch, half in the bag, eating too much food, my kids running around, like I just want to sit there and I think, as you put it, be entertained, right?
Yep.
And in real time, I couldn't follow along with everything that was going on. It just didn't seem all that exciting, right? It didn't hit. It hit for some people who are a lot smarter than me. But again, at halftime of the Super Bowl, I'm not in a smart frame of mind. You know, I'm at like kind of my lowest point. Like I'm just in sports mode and I can't watch and figure out what the hell you're trying to tell us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so again, I'm sure it was brilliant. He's a genius, but it didn't hit for me live either.
And one of my favorite things was actually the following morning when I woke up to an article, and no lie, it said, Eagles fans turned Bourbon Street into Blackout Street. And I was like, okay, that sounds about right. Because I remember working the Super Bowl security back when they had the Super Bowl here in Minneapolis.
Don't remind me.
Well,
Patriots, Eagles.
It's a great game. It's fun to watch.
Yeah.
I actually snuck inside for a while and got to catch the second half. But I remember escorting some people out, and it was actually Donnie Wahlberg, I want to say. He was with Jenny McCarthy. Mm-hmm. And she had like blue hair at the time. And I just remember Eagles fans throwing like full beer bottles at Pats fans, like walking out. And I just thought, I'm like, who does that? Like, even if I'm hammered, I'm not gonna be doing some dumb shit like that. Like, seriously, you know? So that's when I kind of got this negative persona of Eagles fans, maybe in a way. And then to top it off, the next article that I came across was Eagles fans seize garbage truck. And it's literally picture like 10 dudes on the back of a garbage truck, and they're just flipping anything that they can grab their hands onto, and they're just throwing it in the street and just throwing beers in the air. It's like confetti. Absolutely wild. There's an Instagram reel actually that I ended up coming across. And
they're a different breed over there.
Yeah. Really. And it ended up being 38 arrests during that just little incident during those celebrations. It's like, what are we doing? And this was back home in Philly. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, what?
It's grown ass men acting like they're children. Like I remember the Patriots getting to the first Super Bowl, and like me and my friends went nuts, and we grabbed like a Patriots flag, and I was standing in the back of my buddy's dad's truck, but he was driving, and I'm waving the flag, and he's driving, and it's super dangerous, and we're driving down the road, and I'm just like waving the flag, and everyone's honking, and everyone's cheering. That's probably the craziest shit we ever did. You know, like we weren't flipping cars over and like throwing shit at police and stuff. Like it's getting a little crazy these days.
Hijacking garbage trucks. This week we are covering Penelope Architect, straight bourbon whiskey finished with French oak staves. MSRP, we're looking at around $65.70 at 104 proof. Couple accolades, gold medal at the San Fran World Spirits Competition, and it's also recognized for its very innovative French oak staving finishing process.
Just first impressions looking at the bottle, it almost looks like if you and I started a distillery, it almost looks like the wives would have printed off this label, right? Like my wife would have made it on Canva and had it printed out, and then like we stuck it on the bottles and passed out our brew around to the bros in the neighborhood, you know, to try. Like I don't want to shit on it or anything. It's a little bit different than some of these like old school bourbons that we've covered, like, you know, Old Forester and Heaven Hill and some of these bourbons that go way back, right? This one, what would you say? Plain Jane? Simple? Like, how would you describe the label?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. It's very millennial of Penelope, and there's not a lot of lineage, to be honest, right? And I'll get into this, but they've only been around since 2018.
Okay, well that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's very plain Jane. I think that's the best way to put it. It's like it's not something that stands out that you're like, whoa, I got to buy that bottle because it looks like a bottle. You know what I mean? Like, what?
It looks like Lizzie and Katie went on and created a label for us and like slapped it on a bottle for us. And here's the Zika and O'Leary Bourbon Playbook brew. You know?
Yeah,
that's what it is.
If you just literally made this bottle with this font and called it Brown Juice, that would be sweet. I think that'd be cooler, to be honest.
Yeah, like the Washington football team.
Yeah. It's a Cleveland Browns helmet. That's what it is, dude.
Oh, that's a good one. I like that.
So the history on the bourbon. In 2018, Mike Palladini and his wife, Carrie, they actually named this after their unborn daughter, Penelope. So,
oh no,
super sad.
This is a sad story.
It is. It is a little bit. Sad story with a happy ending.
Okay, but must check with manager first.
No.
Xin lỗi bà, ông này muốn Robin Thớt và chơi với T-Bag mà không chịu ký giấy tờ.
No. Schmidt's head.
Mr.
No,
Schilling, you must
got it wrong.
phone.
I said rub, no tug. And then the tea bags, where you heat those up. You dip them in water, you heat them up, and then you put them on pressure. How do I know more about massage than you guys know about massage? That doesn't make any sense.
And the funny thing is, he's more of an entrepreneur. So we're talking about, man, that bottle is like super generic, right? Like the Kirkland label almost looks cooler, right?
Yeah. No, I agree.
And it's the same bottle shape too. Mm-hmm. So Mike himself actually co-founded a company called Bear Mattresses, and it's a Brooklyn-based bed-in-a-box company, like Tuft & Needle, right? So it kind of started with a collaborative beginning with Mike partnering with his childhood friend and neighbor, Danny Palise, to create basically a bourbon that just everybody could enjoy, right? So they kind of started off with Penelope bourbon itself by blending these 3 different bourbon mash bills. So they are incorporating 4 major grains here of corn, rye, wheat, and malted barley. Pretty straightforward, right? For that unique flavor profile, which we all kind of know in the industry. Mm-hmm. That's kind of obviously what every bourbon is made of. But what kind of separates theirs, we'll get into. Although they are new in the industry, right? Again, 2018 is when they came to the market. They've had a lot of significant growth in their distribution process, 23 states nationwide, internationally, Australia, Canada, and the UK. They're collaborating actually with establishments like Castle & Key for a lot of the blending and bottling, and then even outsource a lot of their casks as well all over the US for some of their specific flavors. Along with that, they're distilled in Indiana, which is MGP, but blended and finished in Kentucky, which is interesting because they're actually based out of New Jersey. So there's a lot going on there.
Yeah, you're gonna have to explain that one to me like I'm 12.
Yeah.
What's MGP?
We'll get into that in a hot minute here.
Okay, got you.
But as it's mentioned on the bottle, they use a unique kind of French oak stave finishing process using Tannins Rideau oak. And each release of this Architect is a part of a limited edition blueprint series. And again, using those 4 grain mash bills of corn, rye, wheat, and malted barley. So the interesting thing about them, to me personally, is their global cask finishing series. And it's known as the Cooper Series Innovations. So it's a world tour of finishes. That basically defines the Cooper Series. They pair Penelope straight whiskeys with casks from renowned winemakers in all the regions of the world. And for instance, if you drink Penelope, you'll definitely know these 4. The first one's going to be the rosé cask finish. It's aged in rosé wine casks for that kind of fruity flavor. Valencia cask finish, finished in orange wine casks. It really brings forward those citrus notes. It's truly delicious. It's like an orange dream pop or something. Takaji cask finish, aged in Hungarian dessert wine casks. Huh. It's very sweet, has a lot of depth to it. And then Havana, which is currently hitting the shelves right now. It's finished in Cuban rum casks, which I haven't personally had, but it's fantastic. And then obviously we have the Penelope Rio. Again, we covered it a few weeks back. Delicious, double cask finish, first aged in American honey barrels, then finished in Brazilian Amburana wood casks for that sweet and very unique honey forward flavoring.
It almost reminds you of coconut sipping on it. It's crazy.
Nuts, man.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You don't expect
delicious blend.
You're going to get tastes in Penelope Rio that you don't expect from a bourbon. It's pretty cool.
Exactly. So you asked me earlier a little bit about MGP. So MGP, so Midwest Grain Products. So it's a major distillery based in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. And it's known for producing a lot of the spirits that we currently consume, and a lot of craft bourbon brands that age, blend, and bottle actually their own labels while using the MGP whiskey. And I'll kind of dive into that a little bit more. So MGP and why they're important. So they bottle bulk whiskey production. So MGP distills it and sells the bourbon, rye, or other whiskey brands that don't have their own distilleries, or maybe they're having a specific batch that they like, that they want something different that they're not doing in-house. They basically outsource it to MGP. So MGP is like an outsourcing agent or a wholesaler, right?
And Penelope uses this strategy?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right.
So think like high quality mash bills. They're offering a lot of different mash bill recipes, including high rye, 4-grain bourbons, which a lot of brands use today. And it's really simple for suppliers for popular brands like Penelope, Smoke Wagon, Bullet Rye. They're all sourced from MGP. High West is another big one. So they have aged stock, like literally you go there and they can sell you a young barrel, 2 to 4 years, or, you can pay a little bit more of a premium and get those 6 to 10 year barrels to ultimately finish at your own distillery if you want to do that, right? So you kind of go there with an open mind of like, all right, here's what I'm thinking. Here's the type of, mash bill I want. Here's how I want it aged. Here's how long. Give me some samples, right? So then they kind of go down their list and you kind of like, you pick and go, right? You pick and play. And so it's just super unique, right? It's something that if you're trying to scale a brand without needing like that large infrastructure, like we've talked about on previous episodes, I mean, think about having a barrel, just the warehouse space of, 1,000 barrels over 10 years, Well,
I was going to say, like, if we started our own distillery, this is how we would probably go about it, right? We wouldn't be able to wait 6 years for our first batch to taste it and be like, all right, like, we're ready to rock, right?
Right.
Penelope is founded in 2018. Like, they would just be getting done their first few batches now in 2025, if you think about the years and the aging. So it makes sense that they would have to go use MGP in this process. It's just a little eye-opening. It's not something I knew about or even thought about. We've covered so many old school bourbons so far, so these more modern bourbons are probably taking advantage of this, right?
Yeah.
That's super fascinating. Like, it almost feel like you're cutting corners, though. It's like,
and that's a lot
are you cheating by using MGP? Because that's where my mind goes. It's like, it's like, let's cut years off the process here and finish it in our facility, but not start it. So I'm surprised they don't. I don't know if the people look on them differently for that or what. Do these have an asterisk on them? You know what I mean? Like something like that.
And I would say that's a lot of the negative slack or attention that MGP gets from specific brands is that really, like the premium bourbon? And I mean, it's still aged the same. It's kind of pay to play. A couple interesting things of how to identify if something is MGP sourced, which kind of gets into a couple of the details here. It's kind of interesting. So really what you want to do is you want to look for distilled in Indiana on the label. So by law, bourbon needs to be labeled specifically where the whiskey was distilled. So if the label says distilled in Indiana, but the brand isn't based in Indiana, it's likely sourced from MGP in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. So for example, a bottle might say distilled in Indiana, bottled by Penelope in New Jersey. It's likely MGP. So there's a couple things that goes into this. The Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau sets these specific rules for these labels. And then what it comes down to is a distillation and bottling disclosure. If a whiskey is distilled in one state and bottled in another, the label must state that the distillation is the specific location. So same state exception. If both distillation and the bottling happen in the same state, the label doesn't have to say exactly where it's distilled. So Penelope's case, since Penelope Architect is distilled and bottled in Indiana at MGP, it's not required to mention distilled in Indiana on the label. While Penelope bourbons are headquartered in New Jersey, the finishing process for the Architect series is conducted at their own facility in Bardstown, Kentucky.
It sounds like something Bill Belichick would do if he was in charge of, Penelope, if he was in charge of this distillery. It just sounds like they're kind of cutting corners and they're saying, yeah, we're going to cut years off the distilling process by doing X, but we're not going to put it on our label because of Y, but we're also going to grow and win Super Bowls because of Z. You know what I mean? It just sounds like something Bill would do.
I'm a football coach. I'm not a doctor. The medical staff is the medical staff. I coach the team. Medical people handle the injuries. They don't call plays. I don't do surgery. We have a great deal there. Works out good.
Yeah, it's very much a let's steal signal calls and deflate footballs for sure.
Tom's personal preferences on his footballs are something that he can talk about in much better detail than I could possibly provide.
They didn't prove the football thing, but go on. Circumstantial.
Spoken like a true Pats fan.
How did Brady do in that Super Bowl when they pumped the footballs up?
I'm not even worried about it, dude. I don't live in the past. I'm a Vikes fan.
He won.
So I was actually looking on the back of this bottle to see if there's anything.
Yeah, what do you see?
There's nothing. It just says...
Liars.
Technically it says bottled by Penelope Bourbon Bottling Company in Bardstown, Kentucky. Because again, they finished the barrels in Bardstown, Kentucky. So a lot of times you'll see like LDI, in other words, Lawrenceburg Distiller, Indiana, or MGP ingredients. So basically all that to say, MGP is to whiskey what Hollywood stunt doubles are to like action movies, right? The stunt doubles work super hard. They do all the hard work, all the sweat, tears, blood that goes into it. But the main star, Brad Pitt, gets all the applause.
It's kind of brilliant, this MGP. Like, this is the type of shit in life that you hear about and you're like, man, I would never think of doing this, right? Like, you could have been the middleman for bourbons.
Right.
Who would have thought of that? It's brilliant. It makes so much sense. Now anyone can start a label. Like you and I, we could actually start our label tonight. Yeah. We could do our thing. We just got to come up with the money, which we're not making on the podcast right now, but we got to come up with the money to buy all the barrels, right? But we could do it. But yeah, man, that's super fascinating that exists. I had no idea. Honestly, I had no idea that was a thing, but it makes too much sense. Like how would you make a name for yourself in, if you start in 2018, it's 2025 now. How would you grow and win awards? You get help. You get help. You cut corners on the distillation. That's wild.
Yeah, you go Bill Belichick on everybody.
We're getting ready for Cincinnati.
Should we dive into the tasting notes?
Yeah, let's pop it. This is a brand new bottle. Shout out to neighbor Nick.
Neighbor Nick, appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, neighbor Nick hooked us up with this bottle. It was just sitting in his house. I think his wife actually got it from like a work event, and they're not bourbon drinkers over there. They never open it.
Shout out Lex.
And he just shout out to Alexa as well. And Nick just said here. So yeah, shout out to Nick and Alexa for hooking us up with the Penelope Architect. We're excited to pop this thing open, but this is a fresh pop right here. Ooh.
On the nose, Ryan, what are we getting, man?
Ooh. It's very oaky. It's not super hot to me. Like a little heat on it, but I'm smelling some oak.
Very oaky. It's probably those French oak staves.
Yeah, I would say oak. This actually smells like a bourbon that I would go for. This is like my style.
Mm-hmm.
It's that a little bit of oak, a little bit of caramel, a little bit of vanilla, right? Those hits. That's like a classic. It's like a classic vanilla caramel, right?
But it's very light. Like it's not like a thick caramel, right? It's almost like floral. So it's like toasted oak, vanilla, maybe a little bit of caramel, but like almost floral.
For me, the oak is a little overpowering.
Yeah, it's very oak forward.
But there's a hint. If you told me it was vanilla, I would believe you. If you told me it was caramel, I would believe you. If you told me it was honey, I would believe you.
Because I'm so trustworthy.
It's in that ballpark.
But there is something, like, keep smelling. Do you get a little bit of a floral? Or like, so if you don't think about the toasted oak or the vanilla, there's something that's like sweet.
Yeah.
It's not like you're sticking your nose into a bouquet, but it's almost like you're in the wild.
It's a hint.
It's like when I go in the woods and I go hunting for honeysuckle. And I come across
Have you figured out what honeysuckle
patch?
Was? We mentioned honeysuckle before on the pod. I don't think it was anywhere remotely close to what it actually is.
It's like a bush.
Is it really a bush?
Yeah, I thought it was like alfalfa.
Yeah, you were talking about like being out in a honeysuckle field.
Yeah, I don't know what I was talking about. Mm-hmm. All right, moment of truth. Drum roll, please.
Moment of truth.
It's 104 proof again, so
a spicy meatball on the tongue.
Very spicy meatball.
That's a spicy meatball.
Yeah, give it a
few more sips.
2 or 3, yeah.
Yeah, definitely spice, but I mean, there is a smoothness to it. You mentioned it like almost being light on the nose, right? And I almost get that same. Maybe it's because you just said it, but when you drink it, it's like it is light, but it's also packing a punch. There's also a lot going on here. What are you catching on the palate?
It almost tastes a little thin on the front. Like I wish it was a little bit more sweet, like the Rio toasted barrel, like those French oak staves are definitely shining through for me. So typically, like on the front of my tongue to my mid tongue is going to be where I get all the honey, the dark cherries, the fruit, the sweeter, almost floral notes. In this, it goes from straight honey to toasted marshmallow on the sides to a big slap in the face of baking spices.
There's a lot of spice.
Ton of spice on this. Yeah.
It's an overpowering spice for me. Correct me if I'm wrong. This feels like the opposite of a creamy mouthfeel, right? You almost have to pay attention even harder with this because it's just, again, it's the opposite of the creamy mouthfeel. I don't really know what I'm saying, but it almost makes more sense when you were saying what I thought you were joking last week, but it makes sense now.
I think you're spot on. And I would call this thin, more like from a consistency, like a thin.
Because your penis is too small?
It's not too small, it's too thin, okay? My dick is too thin.
I got a thin dick! Okay, can you keep it down? I'd like to come back here someday.
Everybody knows that it's with that gives sexual gratification. I've read it. Cosmo, Red Book, you name it. What am I supposed to do? I got the thinnest penis in the world. I mean, here, it's like a Twizzler. Look.
No, stop that.
It's something that isn't coating my palate by any means. Compared to the Four Roses last week, it's something that, again, on the front, sweet, and then it just hits me with those baking spices. And then on the finish, it's very long, definitely that vanilla, but the spice is so overwhelming. So if you love a spicy bourbon, spicy meatball, this one would be a fantastic pour for you. But for me personally, it is good, but it's something that it wouldn't be my first pick off the shelf.
It's underwhelming you.
A little bit. But here's the thing. I also know that Penelope Architect it's a solid bourbon, but I know how good the Valencia is, the Rio is, the Rosé is pretty good, Toasted's okay, and then the Havana I want to dive into because it sounds awesome, and then the Japanese one as well. But for this one, it's mid-tier to me. For the brand.
This wasn't one that came off your shelf, right? This one didn't come out from your bourbon cave. It was gifted to us from a neighbor, a friend. So is this one where it's easy to get, or do you have to go secondary market for this, in your opinion?
No, this one you specifically can just find on the shelf anywhere.
For me, it's like, I do like a spicy bourbon, but I love those bourbons that like hit you with a little sweetness at first and then kick in the spice, right? I'm getting mostly an oaky spice bomb.
Which is interesting because I thought you would almost like this one more because it was overwhelmingly spicy. And I think what you're referring to as well is a more complex bourbon.
Yeah.
Right? Something where it's like, oh.
There's multiple things going on.
Exactly. Yeah. So the aging here, we're looking at a blend of 4 to 5 year old bourbons. Those have been finished in French oak staves. And the mash bill is 74% corn, 16% wheat, 7% rye, and 3% malted barley.
All right, so E5 scale. Zika, this is going to be a tough one, I think, because this is a bourbon that I think it underwhelmed both of us a little bit. Doesn't make it bad, right? Like, I think every bourbon we sip on has its high points, right? And I like a spicy bourbon, and I would sip on this and happily do it. I think an ice cube would probably go a long way for me with this bourbon. Honestly, we're drinking it neat tonight on the pod. We always do, but I think sip it on this thing with an ice cube. This would be an easy sipper for me. You know, I could see this being a Saturday night sipper maybe for me. But E5 scale, usually I kick us off, right? So let me just run through this, and then we'll get your take. Daily Dram, it's not there for me. It's not a Daily Dram.
It's not in the budget either.
Yeah. What was the MSRP? Remind me.
65.
Yeah, 65. Roughly. That's too expensive for a Daily Dram. I don't really think this fits in a budget blend category personally, right? A little expensive for a budget blend. Impress my guests. I don't know if my guests would know the Penelope brand is pretty new. We joked a little bit about the marketing, the logo. This bottle is not that impressive to me. It's simplistic, right? I think there's some Penelope brands that would impress my guests. I don't know if Architect's that one. So I'm going to skip that one as well. Precious Pour. I don't think this falls into that category, right?
I always assume if you can find it. Mm-hmm. If the answer is no, like on the shelf wise, then it shouldn't be in precious pour.
Yeah.
Like precious pour is something it's unique. You're not going to break it out unless it's an event. It's one of your more expensive bottles sitting on the shelf, right?
Yeah. And if I can walk into my Total Wine and find this almost every time, or even Costco, and find this almost every time, it's not going to be a precious pour, especially for $65.
Right.
That's just out. So I guess for me, like, process of elimination for me, Zika, is for O'Leary, this is a Saturday night sipper. Like, I could see myself popping this in a glass with an ice cube and happily sipping on this. It's a nice spicy bourbon. That's kind of my style. I think you knew that coming to the table tonight. I think you probably thought I would like this one. I was a little underwhelmed. I wanted a little bit more going on with it, but it's still really a good pour. Like you said, like toasted marshmallow, vanilla, caramel, some of those floral notes. I didn't catch a lot of those floral notes personally, but I still understand where you're going with that on the nose. A spicy meatball, which I like, but not overpowering. This is a bourbon that I would drink again. And it's good because neighbor Nick gave me this bottle and it's going to live in my house now, right? So this is something that literally this Saturday I could pour in a glass for me and the wife and we could enjoy. And I think I would. So for me personally, process of elimination lands me on Saturday night sipper. Over 100 proof, a cool little bottle. It's something you can bring out every now and then, a couple weekends and have a good night. So I'm going to land on Saturday night sipper. Where are you going?
I was thinking between Saturday Night Sipper and Impress My Guests. Yeah. I was leaning towards Impress My Guests before the show, but not having this. Again, I haven't had this for a while, and it was like my third or fourth pour in like a bourbon tasting with some buddies. So I just don't think it's going to impress my guests, right?
Me either.
Like the next step up from there is budget blend, and I don't really feel like $65 is a budget blend, something that I'm going to mix cocktails with. I could, but I would never spend $65 on a cocktail mixer.
Yeah.
Unless it was like the perfect recipe. And I knew there was something that made it different.
And then are you going to compare this to Rip 10?
See, not even close to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
of course.
fly
So
kite.
It's not a precious pour.
Right. Yeah. And not even close. That's why I'm stuck between like, I want it to be Impress My Guests so bad, but I might just pour it out into a decanter that I bought from Crate and Barrel and then serve it to my guests to impress them.
So why?
Change the label, change the appearance.
Okay.
And just say it's a unique, higher proof, complex French oak stave bourbon. Mm-hmm. If that's the route I could go, I would go Impress My Guests.
But again, that's towing the line. That's cheating a little bit. That's misleading.
But we've been talking about that all night.
Yeah. It's kind of like the premature Patrick Mahomes GOAT talk. Like you don't want to mislead people like all the national talking heads were doing before the Super Bowl. And then it's funny how that narrative switches right after the game where the Eagles blow them out in embarrassing fashion.
So listen, if I had to tag in Bill Belichick in a death match.
Yeah, I don't really know what that means.
And he would let me put Penelope in a decanter and serve it to my guests. I preach about the oak staves. I preach about higher proof. Then I would go Impress My Guests. If it's here and now, living in the present like a true Vikings fan would, I would have to slide it into Saturday Night Sipper, but it would be way in the back. Or if Ryan O'Leary comes over.
So this is closest to not being on the scale for you.
It is. With that, a little caveat, if I did have a friend come over that says, oh, I love like a spicy bourbon, then I'd be like, awesome. Yeah. I have this, and I'm going to pour an 11-finger pour just for you, buddy.
Because you want to get rid of it. Oh,
exactly.
My gosh. Exactly. Like, it's a solid Saturday night sipper for me. You wouldn't enjoy it as much. Is there another category you could make up on the fly here? I'm putting you on the spot. But is there another category that you could create for this today? Right? Like, how would you describe where Architect would fit in?
Tuesday night teaser.
Yeah.
Like something that you're just like, all right.
I want to take a sip of a decent bourbon, but I don't want to get into my good stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tuesday night teaser is where I would love to put this if I had to. But since we're working outside of the E5 scale and, due to contractual agreements, we can only stick to 1 through 5. I'm going to stick with Saturday Night Sipper as my E5 scale final answer.
And with that, thanks for tuning in to the Bourbon Playbook. Remember, Penelope Architect isn't just bourbon. It's bourbon with blueprints for greatness, especially if you're into cutting corners. Then you're really into the greatness.
And until next time, keep pouring, keep laughing. And if you can't build a house with it, at least you can build a new contractual agreement with your operations team for a new E5 scale.
Yeah. You have to let me know who the operations team is. It's O'Leary, it's Zika. Is there anyone else on the team?
The wives.
Okay, we'll check with them.
Cheers, gang.
The E6 scale.